Hey gang, welcome to our special Super Flower Moon edition. Hopefully you can see the moon in the background. The sun is just setting off to the west. The moon rises in the east, follows that path called the ecliptic across the sky, the same path that the planets follow. So far we've started with the Big Dipper, and we used that to find Polaris and the Little Dipper, and I asked you to figure out which stars you could see in the Little Dipper. And the reason for that was that if you can see, and this is going to come into play today, because if you can see Polaris, that means you can see 2 magnitude stars. Those are pretty bright. If you can see this star right here, that means you can see 3 magnitude stars. That's 2.5 times dimmer than that one. If you can see these stars in the handle, that means you can see 4 magnitude stars. That's 2.5 times dimmer still. And if you can see this one, that means you can see 5 magnitude stars. The higher the number, the dimmer the stars. So in 5, if you can see all the stars in the Little Dipper, you're gonna have a good night looking at stars. We're gonna be talking about something at the end today that is a 3.5 magnitude. So if you can see this star, but you can't see the stars in the handle, you wouldn't be able to see that from your location on that night. On the other hand, if you could see these 4s, then seeing a 3.5 shouldn't be any problem at all. So that's why we use this as kind of a measuring stick to see how dim of a star we can see. The other constellation we looked at last time was Lyra, and Lyra is pretty easy to find. Tonight the stars aren't out yet, but the Big Dipper would be right about here, and Lyra would be off to the east, just rising. The reason it's so easy to find is this star, Vega, is a bright star. It's the second brightest star in the northern hemisphere, visible from the northern hemisphere. Only Sirius is brighter. So in the spring and summer, this is the brightest star in the sky, and it's the anchor of Lyra. One of the cool things about Lyra is that ring nebula, the remnants of an exploded star about a little bit bigger than our sun, but same class of stars. And that's a great, it's a tough telescope target, but it's easy to find where it is in the sky because it's on a line between those 2 stars. And you'll know where it is, and that's the hardest part about finding things in the sky. Once you see it, you'll see just a little smoke ring. And if you have really good skies and like at about 100 magnification, you might be able to see that white dwarf inside the shell that's called the planetary nebula. And remember, that's like a smoke ring being puffed out by the death of that sun-sized star. We're going to use the Big Dipper to find another constellation, and that is, we used the Big Dipper to find Polaris in this direction. Those same pointer stars, if you go in the other direction, points to kind of a cool constellation called Leo. Leo the lion. Here's his head, and then he's got his legs down here somewhere, and this is his tail and his back. What you'll really notice is in the sky it looks like a backwards question mark. They called it the sickle, but it looks like a backward question mark in the sky. The pointer stars from the Big Dipper are over here, and they're going to point to that sickle. And this star, Regulus, is a really bright star. This star over here, Denebula, is a bright star too. And this star, kind of at the base of his neck, Algebra, it's like algebra with no R. Algebra is a bright star too. Just like in Lyra, a lot of the stars that at first glance, they're just points of light. When you look at them closer, you discover they're double stars. Regulus has a white dwarf that orbits it. Algebra is a orange star and a yellow star. So one of them is about like our sun. The other one is a little bit cooler surface. And you can see a little bit of orange tint to that one. This star here, I think, is a double too. But double stars are common, triple stars are common, 4 stars together are common. Our sun being alone in the sky is fairly unique. And it's interesting to think, what would a planet orbiting a double star, sometimes there'd be 2 suns in the sky, sometimes there'd be, at night there might still be a sun in the sky, all kinds of weird combinations. And there have been planets, there's a planet around this one, and there's also a planet around one of the suns in Lyra. But sometimes there's even more stars together. And if you find Leo, use the Big Dipper, the pointer stars in the Big Dipper to find the sickle of Leo. That backwards question mark is pretty easy to see, and it doesn't take too much of an imagination in this case to make it look like a lion. But if you take kind of one lion's body width over to the right, there's something in the sky that doesn't look right. It looks different. It's called the Beehive Cluster. And when you look at it with your eyes, it's not quite a point of light. It looks like you have smudge on your glasses or something. It's not a single star. It's a whole bunch of stars that are far away. And individually the stars aren't that bright. They're like 7, 8, 9 magnitude stars. But collectively, when you put them all together in such a small spot, it shines with a magnitude of about 3.5. So you can see it with your eyes if you have decently dark skies. But what I would really suggest is look at it with the binoculars, and then it's just like, oh, there's a whole bunch of stars there. That's a star cluster. This is called an open cluster. Other famous open clusters are the Pleiades, the 7 sisters. You see those in the winter. The Hyades, the face of Taurus the bull, that's an open cluster. So, viewing isn't going to be good for the next couple of days. We got such a bright full moon that it's going to wash all these stars out. You may have noticed that when you were trying to see which stars in the Little Dipper you could see. If the moon was out, you might not have been able to see any of them. That's the impact that the light from the moon has on the stars. But next week we're going to come back to Lyra and Leo, and there'll be an observation challenge to see those. Quiz on Friday over Leo and Lyra and apparent magnitude, maybe a little bit on double stars, a little bit on how to find things in Schoology, like the video I put out yesterday, and maybe something on the Pride PBIS chart too. A couple of other pieces of sky news. There is another comet, Comet Swan, that I may tell you more about at the end of the month. It may become naked eye visible in the northern hemisphere. There's a meteor shower right now, but the moon is kind of washing it out. Kind of cool. It's the remnants of Halley's comet, comet that goes by every 76 years. Have a good evening.